You don't get rich by chasing money, you get rich by changing your mind. Because the greatest economy you'll ever live in isn't Wall Street, it's the space between your ears. You see, the mind is like soil. It doesn't care what you plant, wheat or weeds, gold or garbage, it will return what you sow multiplied. So the question is never, why am I not wealthy? The question is, what have I allowed to grow in my thinking? Most people spend more time planning a vacation than designing their financial future. They want abundance, but their thoughts are soaked in doubt, entitlement, and fear. They want prosperity, but their daily philosophy whispers, it's not for people like me. And yeah, there's the great irony, wealth has very little to do with money. It has everything to do with mindset. Now, I'm not talking about wishing. I'm not talking about closing your eyes and hoping the universe drops a fortune in your lap. That's fantasy. What I'm talking about is training. Intentional daily, disciplined thinking that aligns with action. Because the mind, like a muscle, responds to repetition. And if you train it to believe, to act, to build, to invest, it will create a life of richness far beyond the bank account. So before you ask, how do I make more money? Ask this, how do I become more valuable? That's where wealth begins, not with dollars, but with development. If you're ready, let's begin, because the secret to attracting unlimited wealth isn't hidden in a strategy, it's revealed in a mindset. And today we're going to rewire yours for abundance. Let me tell you something I've learned along the way. Wealth doesn't begin in the bank. It doesn't start with the paycheck or the deal or the business idea. It begins in the mind. That's where all great fortunes are, built in the foundation of belief, imagination, and thought. The tragedy is most people are poor long before they're broke. They've got money problems in the mirror of their mindset. They talk poor, think small, and expect little. And what you expect, you usually get. You see, your mind is a construction site. Every thought, every belief, every assumption you hold is either laying bricks for a mansion or digging a hole for a trap. Now, when I was 25 years old, I was broke and embarrassed. I had pennies in my pocket and excuses in my mouth. But then I was told something that shook me. You're not poor because of the economy. You're poor because of your philosophy. And that woke me up. I started listening better. I started reading better. I started thinking better. And you know what happened? The money started to find me. But it didn't show up in my pocket until it first showed up in my mindset. Most folks wait to feel wealthy until they see a number on their bank statement. But let me tell you, that's backwards. You've got to train your mind to believe wealth is possible for you. Not just for someone on television. Not just for your boss. Not just for some stranger online, you. Because if you don't believe that, nothing else matters. You'll sabotage every opportunity that comes your way. And you'll justify it with stories that keep you safe and small. Scarcity doesn't begin in your wallet, it begins in your thoughts. So guard them well. Expect growth. Expect abundance. Expect results. If you can start there right up here, you'll start attracting the tools, the people, and the ideas to match it. That's the secret. Wealth doesn't respond to wishful thinking. It responds to trained thinking. One of the greatest shifts you'll ever make is when you stop waiting for life to demand more of you and start demanding more of yourself. That's when the game changes. That's when results begin to reflect intention. Because the world doesn't hand out wealth to the most hopeful, it hands it to the most prepared. And preparation begins with standards. When you raise your standards, you raise your identity, and identity is what determines your behavior. Now, I remember a time early in my career when I was showing up late, giving average effort, and wondering why success kept passing me by. I wanted wealth, sure, but I hadn't raised my standard to match it. I was wishing at one level and operating at another. That gap will destroy your confidence. It wasn't until I raised the bar for myself that things began to shift. I said, no more showing up unprepared. No more winging it. No more waiting around for things to get easier. I had to get better. And that's when the results came and oh, because the world got easier, but because I got stronger. See, wealth isn't just about money, it's about who you become in the process of earning it. You've got to demand more from yourself than any boss, any competitor, or any circumstance will. You've got to wake up early when no one's watching. You've got to study longer when no one's applauding. You've got to save when others are spending, learn when others are wasting time, and lead yourself before you expect to lead anyone else. You don't get what you want, you get what you're willing to discipline yourself for. So train your mind to hold yourself to a higher level of responsibility. Elevate your standards for how you show up. And eventually, the world will rise to meet you there. Not because it changed, but because you did. I learned long ago that the difference between success and stagnation often comes down to philosophy, not luck, not circumstance, not the wind or the weather. It's not what happens that determines your wealth, it's what you do about what happens. The wealthy don't wait for favorable conditions, they become favorable conditions. They bring the mindset, the drive, and the discipline regardless of what's happening around them. They don't react, they respond. And that difference changes everything. There was a season in my life where I blamed everything. The economy wasn't right, the taxes were too high, the government wasn't helping, my background held me back. And as long as I lived in that mindset, nothing moved forward. Because when you put the cause of your problem outside yourself, you also put the solution out of your hands. That's a dangerous philosophy. But the moment I changed that, when I took ownership of my thinking and decided to stop looking for sympathy and start looking for strategy, life began to open up. Let me tell you, there's no paycheck for pity. You don't build wealth by complaining. You build it by adjusting your internal compass. I had to start asking myself better questions, not, why is this happening to me? But what can I learn here? How can I turn this into an advantage? That's the mindset of the wealthy. They seek solutions. They train their thoughts to find doors, not dead ends. And they carry that mindset everywhere they go. Your philosophy is the lens through which you see opportunity. If that lens is cracked with blame, fear, or resentment, you'll miss every chance to grow. But if it's clear, if it's polished by personal responsibility and sharpened by hunger for growth, then you'll see openings where others see obstacles. So if you want to train your mind to attract wealth, start by upgrading your philosophy. Trade excuses for execution. Trade blame for better thinking. Because your wealth won't begin when your circumstances change. It begins the moment you do. I've always believed that your mind is a garden. And whatever you plant there intentionally or not will grow. Some people plant weeds without even realizing it. They consume fear-based news all day, gossip with people who've never built anything, and feed on drama like it's a full-course meal. And then they wonder why their financial life is a mess. Why? There's no clarity, no discipline, no breakthrough. But your mind doesn't work in isolation. What you feed it shows up in your habits, your energy, your decisions, and yes, your wallet. Years ago, I made a simple commitment. I'd only feed my mind with things that would build me. I treated personal development like a financial strategy. Books became my mentors, seminars became my classroom, conversations became investments. And it wasn't long before my income started catching up with my inputs. That's the connection most people never make. Your income rarely exceeds your personal growth. It may bump up here and there by luck or timing, but it won't stay up without substance behind it. It's like this. If you pour muddy water into a clear glass long enough, it doesn't matter how clean it started, it gets murky. Same with your thoughts. You can start with potential, but if all day long you're listening to people who talk small, think small, and criticize success, you'll start shrinking without even knowing it. Your mindset contracts, and so does your wallet. I remember sitting down with a man who told me he just couldn't seem to make more money. I asked him, "What did you read this week?" He blinked. Nothing. I asked, "Who did you learn from?" He shrugged. No one. I said, "Then the result makes sense. You can't grow beyond what you're feeding on. So ask yourself, what are you consuming daily? Are your thoughts becoming assets or liabilities? If you want more income, start by upgrading the inputs. Be intentional about your environment. Surround yourself with ideas that stretch you, not shrink you. Read the kind of books that challenge your excuses. Listen to people who've done what you want to do. Guard your mind like a vault, because what goes in eventually comes out in your choices, in your standards, and in your bank account. Discipline in many ways is the quiet partner of wealth. It doesn't show up flashy, it doesn't shout, but it works in the background, day in and day out, building your financial future one brick at a time. See, people often think wealth is a result of brilliance or luck. And while those things may give you a momentary edge, they don't build empires. What builds empires is routine, habit, structure. Discipline is the factory of wealth. I learned early that the secret to success wasn't doing extraordinary things. One seat was doing the ordinary things with extraordinary consistency. That means budgeting when no one's watching, reading when everyone else is scrolling, making that sales call when you'd rather relax. It's waking up early to plan your day instead of drifting through it. And here's what's powerful. Small disciplines, repeated daily, become invisible engines of success. Now, the undisciplined are often very busy, but it's circular motion, not forward movement. They spend, they scramble, they hope. But without structure, they burn energy and gain little ground. The disciplined, on the other hand, make steady deposits into their future, whether through learning, saving, networking, or building a skill. These are investments that compound over time. Not overnight, but over time, and that's the magic of it. I used to write out my day the night before. Not just the big goals, but the small disciplines. Read 10 pages, make 5 phone calls, track every expense. That list became my wealth map. It wasn't always glamorous, but it gave me direction. And eventually it gave me results. Because here's what happens: discipline builds credibility with yourself. And when you trust yourself to follow through, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. People say, I just don't feel motivated. But motivation is unreliable. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Discipline gets up when it's raining. Discipline reads when it's tired. Discipline makes the hard choice because it's the right choice. And if you want to attract unlimited wealth, you'll need to build the kind of inner structure that can hold it. So don't wait for inspiration-build systems. Don't chase Magic Master the mundane, because wealth doesn't show up where there's chaos. It shows up where there's order. And discipline is how you turn your mind from a dreamer into a builder and your life into something remarkable. When I first began my journey toward success, I learned something that changed everything. Money is not something you chase at, something you attract by becoming valuable. Most people spend their lives running after dollars, hoping to catch them like butterflies. But the wealthy, they build gardens. They attract the butterflies by becoming creators of value. If your mind is trained to think like a consumer, you'll always be on the receiving end of wealth, not the generating end. You'll spend, you'll want, you'll hope, but you'll always be dependent on what someone else has created. That mindset will keep you in limitation. But if you train your mind to think like a producerto, ask not, what can I get, but what can I give? Everything shifts. You begin to see opportunity not as something that appears, but as something you build. When I was just starting out, I wasn't the smartest or the fastest or the most connected, but I asked one question that made all the difference. How can I become more valuable in the marketplace? I realized that the marketplace doesn't pay you for time, it pays you for value. If you want to earn more, you've got to become more. More skilled, more knowledgeable, more resourceful. You've got to solve real problems. That's what wealth responds to service. I've seen people double, triple, even multiply their income tenfold, not because they got lucky, but because they became more useful, a better communicator, a better strategist, a better leader. And they didn't do it all at once. They did it by stacking small improvements over time. That's the real game. Not flash, not hype, just value. You've got to stop thinking like someone waiting to be hired and start thinking like someone who hires. Stop looking at your bank account and start looking at your skill set. What can you create? What can you teach? What problems can you solve better than anyone else? When your mind is trained to seek solutions, not security, you'll always have more than enough. And remember, you can't fake value. The marketplace is too smart for that. But if you commit to real growth, if you discipline yourself to improve who you are, and what you offer money will become a byproduct of your contribution. So don't chase the money. Chase mastery. Serve with excellence. because the world rewards those who solve problems, and the value you bring determines the wealth you receive. When I was young and broke, I thought money was the problem. But over time, I realized it wasn't my bank account that was empty, it was my environment. I was surrounded by small thinkers, excuse makers, and people more committed to comfort than growth. And that kind of association isn't neutral, it's shaping you every day. Association trains belief. And belief, my friend, trains behavior. Think of your mind like fertile soil. If you plant seeds of discipline, vision, and resourcefulness, you get a harvest of results. But what happens when you let weeds grow cynicism, gossip, fear? That soil becomes toxic. The same principle applies to people. The conversations you hear, the values you absorb, the habits you witness, they all influence how you think and therefore how you behave. I learned to audit my circle the same way I audit my finances. I stopped asking, do I like this person? And started asking, are they helping me grow? That one shift helped me make the leap from surviving to thriving. Because when you surround yourself with wealth-minded individuals, people who invest in ideas, speak in solutions, and plan for decades, you start to rise to that standard. Not because someone told you to, but because it becomes normal. That's the power of proximity. Now, I don't mean you have to abandon everyone in your life who isn't financially successful, but you must guard your inputs. You need a circle that reflects your desired future, not your current limitations. You need voices that push you, challenge you, and stretch your imagination. One new mentor can change the trajectory of your life. One mastermind group can reshape your thinking. One conversation can unlock a breakthrough. I once spent an afternoon with a man whose net worth dwarfed mine by tenfold. And do you know what struck me most? It wasn't his money. It was his language, his calm, his thinking. He didn't talk about lack. He talked about leverage. He didn't complain. He strategized. And just by being in the room, my beliefs expanded. That's what association does. It's not just about networking, it's about normalizing greatness. So I'll leave you with this. Don't just change what you do change, who you're around. Because your environment is a mirror, and over time you will behave like what you believe. Choose to be around those who stretch your vision, and soon your habits and your wealth will follow. Money isn't just about numbers, it's about feelings. And the truth is, most people sabotage their financial future because they let emotions run the show. Fear makes them freeze. Envy makes them compare and despair. Impulse drives them to spend when they should be saving. If you want to attract unlimited wealth, you must first train your mind to master your emotions, not let your emotions master you. When I first started on my path, I saw countless people caught in emotional traps. One friend would sell investments at the first sign of a dip, panic spreading like wildfire. Another would chase the latest shiny thing, spending money they didn't have to impress people they didn't even like. These patterns don't just hurt wallets, they destroy confidence and cripple decision-making. Wealth requires calmness under pressure, clarity in chaos. The wealthy understand that emotions are powerful signals, but they don't act on every feeling. Instead, they create a gap between feeling and reaction, a pause that lets logic and strategy step in. They learn to say, I feel scared, but I will still invest because my plan is long-term. Or, I feel envy, but I will focus on my progress, not someone else's. This is emotional mastery, and it's one of the most underrated skills in finance. I remember a time when a market downturn wiped out a portion of my portfolio. Instead of panicking, I leaned into patience. I reminded myself that wealth is built over years, not days. I stayed steady, invested strategically, and watched the recovery. That experience taught me that emotions don't disappear, they just need to be managed. And when you master that, money starts trusting you. Control over emotions translates directly into control over finances. It's not about ignoring how you feel, it's about directing those feelings into disciplined action. You don't become a robot, you become a leader of your inner world. And that leadership attracts wealth, because wealth responds to clarity, not chaos. So today, Commit to becoming the master of your mind and emotions. Let calm intention replace impulsive reaction. Train your feelings to serve your purpose, and you will unlock the financial freedom that many only dream about. Formal education lays the groundwork. It gives you a skill, a trade, a way to make a living. But if you want to attract unlimited wealth, you must go beyond what the classroom offers. The real key is self-education. This is where your mind becomes a magnet for opportunity, growth, and freedom. When I first started out, I realized that degrees and diplomas only take you so far. It was the books I read after hours, the mentors I sought out, and the lessons learned through experience that truly transformed my life. I remember devouring every book on personal development and finance I could find, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. This hunger for knowledge became an investment with the highest returns. You see, formal education is like planting a seed in fertile soil. It sets you up for growth. But self-education is the sunlight and water that make that seed sprout and flourish. It's the commitment to learning every day, no matter where you are or how much you already know. The more you feed your mind with wisdom, the richer your decisions become. Mentors in particular offer something that books can't, a real-world experience condensed into guidance. I've had mentors who challenged my thinking, held me accountable, and showed me the way when I was ready to give up. Their insight saved me years of trial and error, and their belief in my potential fueled my confidence. Self-education isn't about chasing the latest fad or quick fix. It's about deepening your understanding, sharpening your skills, and expanding your perspective. It's about being proactive, not passive, in your growth. When you train your mind this way, you don't just prepare for wealth, you attract it. Remember, your income can never exceed your personal development. The richer your mind, the richer your life. So invest daily in learning. Seek wisdom relentlessly, and watch how your financial world transforms. To attract unlimited wealth, you must move beyond mere desire and cultivate purpose. Wanting to be rich is a start, but wealth is never drawn to passivity or vague wishes. It responds to clear, purposeful action and intention, sharpened like a blade. I learned early on that waking up with a plan isn't just a habit, it's the foundation for financial success. When I first began my journey, I realized that those who succeed are not simply lucky, they are deliberate. They write their goals down, not as distant dreams, but as daily reminders of what they're working toward. This act of writing isn't about creating pressure, it's about creating clarity. When your mind is trained to focus on specific outcomes, it begins to work differently. It seeks solutions, notices opportunities, and prioritizes what matters most. Purpose is also about character. Wealth that comes without integrity or discipline is fleeting. True financial success requires a mind molded by values like honesty, persistence, and responsibility. This is not something that happens overnight. It's a process of training your thoughts, habits, and actions to align with the person you want to become. I've seen time and again how individuals who cultivate purpose refuse to be shaken by setbacks because their vision is anchored deeper than temporary circumstances. Tracking your progress is another vital part of this process. When you study your actions and results, you learn what works and what doesn't. This feedback loop sharpens your mind, making your pursuit more intelligent and intentional. It transforms vague hopes into measurable steps and small wins, which fuel confidence and momentum. A mind trained with purpose becomes a beacon for wealth. It draws the right people, the right ideas, and the right opportunities. Passivity leaves you vulnerable to distractions and doubt, but purposeful focus builds resilience and power. So, don't just want wealth, train your mind to pursue it with clarity, discipline, and character. When you do, poverty becomes an impossibility, and abundance becomes your natural state. As we draw this journey to a close, remember this: the greatest wealth you will ever possess is the richness of your own mind. If you want to attract unlimited wealth, the transformation begins within. Your thoughts are the seeds from which your financial future grows, and how you cultivate those thoughts determines the harvest you will reap. It is not the market, the economy, or even luck that decides your success. It is the way you train your mind day in and day out to see opportunity, to demand more from yourself, and to act with purpose Think about those who have truly prospered not just in money, but in life. They didn't wait for perfect conditions or for someone to hand them success on a silver platter. They understood that success is a philosophy, a mindset they carried into every decision, every challenge, every setback. When you take responsibility for your own mindset, when you choose to feed your mind with growth and discipline rather than fear and doubt, you begin to break the invisible chains that hold most people back. You start thinking like the wealthy, and more importantly, you begin acting like them. You must embrace discipline as your daily companion. Wealth is not a stroke of luck or a moment of magic. It is the compound result of small, consistent actions fueled by self-respect and long-term vision. It means showing up every day, investing in yourself, managing your money wisely, and refusing to let emotions like fear or envy sabotage your progress. Emotional mastery is just as important as financial savvy, because uncontrolled feelings can make you run from good opportunities or chase illusions that lead nowhere. Surround yourself with people who elevate you, who challenge you to grow and stretch your thinking. Your circle has a profound influence on your beliefs and your behaviors. If you want to think wealthy, you must be around those who embody wealth not just in dollars, but in mindset, values, and ambition. Finally, remember that wealth follows purpose. It's not about mindless accumulation, but about setting clear intentions, writing down your goals, and tracking your progress. Purpose gives your actions meaning and your wealth staying power. Now is the time for action. Take a moment today to reflect. What thoughts are you feeding your mind? Are you setting high standards for yourself? Are you surrounding yourself with the right influences? Are you disciplined in your habits and purposeful in your goals? If not, begin today, start small. Read a chapter, write down your goals, connect with a mentor, or simply remind yourself daily that wealth is your birthright, but only if you train your mind to receive it. Change won't happen overnight, but with patience and persistence, you will see your mindset shift, your habits align, and your financial reality transform. The secret to attracting unlimited wealth is not hidden, it is within you, waiting to be unlocked. So, step into this day with a renewed commitment to your mental discipline and purpose. The life you desire, the wealth you deserve, begins with the mind you choose to build. Train it well, and watch as the doors of opportunity swing wide open.